With this presentation, we'll take a little bit more look at web layout, focusing on some of the mobility ideas that you find in Chapter 6. One thing that you can do with hyperlinks that we haven't quite mentioned is you can actually use hyperlinks to link to different parts of the same page. This can become important if you have a very long page and you want to provide some quick and dirty mechanism for users to move to specific sections. The key to all this is to use the ID attribute. An example is provided here. Simply type in the URL and you'll see an example. And as you notice here with the anchor tag, for the href attribute, we use a pound symbol followed by some ID. This means that if you click on the link which says current semester on the page, it will jump the page down to the div with the ID current PSU. The pound symbol in the href indicates that what follows is an ID, so that when you do click on that link, it will jump to that specific ID. Now here I happen to be using div in terms of where it's going, but it can be any HTML5 element so long as you specify that ID. So let's take a little bit about mobile layout. Mobile layout becomes especially important as the world moves towards a more mobile-friendly web. In general, here are some tips provided by the author. Single column design becomes very important given the limited size of many screens. You should limit scrolling to only one direction and use heading elements and lists. You should avoid using tables and avoid using pixel units and style sheets. Use percentages instead. You should avoid absolute positioning in style sheets, make it relative, and you should hide content that is not essential for mobile use. The graphic you see on the right, again, uses some of the HTML5 elements that we haven't quite mentioned, but you'll see some examples of these in the code samples to follow. Here are some more best practices when it comes to mobile navigation. You should provide minimal navigation near the top of the page, again, due to the limited screen size. However, you should provide consistent navigation. In other words, you should see the same navigation across pages. You should avoid hyperlinks that open files in new windows or in pop-up windows. Often, on mobile devices, this obscures the original window or causes other problems. Finally, you should try to balance both the number of hyperlinks on a page and the number of levels needed to access information. People shouldn't have to go through 10 levels of links to find something. You want to try and keep it as short as possible. When it comes to graphics, you should avoid displaying images that are wider than the screen width. For mobility, smaller images are the way to go. You should configure alternate, small, optimized background images. And keep in mind that some mobile browsers will downsize all images, so try and avoid using images that contain text as it can be hard to see. You should avoid the use of large graphic images, and you should specify the size of images in your IMG tag. And we've already got an example of that in some of the earlier work you've done by using the width and the height width and height attributes of the IMG tag. Something else we've already done is to provide alternate text for graphics and other non-text elements by using the alt attribute. One other thing that can be handy when it comes to mobility is something called viewport. We've used a meta tag elsewhere in our HTML code, but an additional meta tag that we can use has a name of viewport. This allows you to kind of scale how the content is presented when the page is viewed. I encourage you to check out the example that's linked here. Be sure and type in this URL to your browser, view the source, and see what's going on. The meta tag will be in the head element, but do check out the HTML code. Keep in mind that for this URL, the last character in the URL is an L, not a 1. Media queries are a CSS idea, which allows you to optimize the content that you're presenting for a range of output devices. In a sense, you can specify different display parameters based on what type of device is viewing the page. This can be very handy for mobile devices. There are a few ways we can handle media queries, but in general we can direct the browser to a different style sheet depending on the viewing device. This is useful to format the page appropriately for whatever device is viewing it. There is an @media rule which can be implemented within CSS, and for an example of that you should type in the URL presented here. And again, the last item in this URL is an L, not a 1. So check out the page, view the source, view the style sheet, see what's going on. One thing you can notice with this page is that if you zoom your browser in, the display will change dramatically. And if you zoom out, it will also change, depending on how far you're zoomed in and zoom out. But play around with it, see what's going on. This is the end of our presentation on web layouts.